Hi and welcome to the Bruce channel. I'm Bruce and there is no question of where we need to start this week. But at my deadline, we do not have all the details. There are still a lot of blanks to be filled in. So, one day after we celebrated 240 years of all men are created equal, police shot and killed a black man in Baton Rouge. Some reports indicate he was shot in the chest and the back, which will take some explanation. Let's withhold judgment, but there is video and more than one source. In St. Paul the next night, a routine traffic stop, believed to be because of a broken taillight, but the black man was apparently following orders, getting his ID, and the police shot him. His girlfriend recorded it, posted it live, and he died. Now, we know this happens too often. Let's assume for the sake of argument that sometimes the person who was shot is a bad guy. Let's further assume for argument that sometimes the suspect even does something threatening. But as video becomes more and more ubiquitous, it's going to be harder and harder for police to say that's always the case. The man in North Charleston who was running away last year and shot in the back several times, there was video. The man in Chicago who was running away and shot repeatedly, there was video, even though it surfaced, 14 months later? So events like these give rise to the Black Lives Matter movement, demonstrations all over the country. As a sidebar, let me acknowledge that there have been those who give speeches or post all lives matter, and of course, that is true. But as a white guy, I gotta say, were I African American, my perception might be that things seem to be unbalanced. A couple of years ago, black guy in New York selling illegal cigarettes, taken down by a chokehold. He kept saying, "I can't breathe." Well, he died, which amounts to a sentence of death for illegally selling cigarettes. The guy in Baton Rouge this week was selling CDs outside of a convenience store. Shot in the back and the chest? Really? The guy last year in North Charleston was running away. The guy in St. Paul was apparently reaching for his wallet. But Jared Loughner, who killed 6 people in Tucson in 2011 and severely wounded Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, is white. Well, he was captured alive and he's in prison. James Holmes, who opened fire in the Colorado movie theater, he killed 12, wounded 70. He's white. He was captured alive. He's in prison. And last year, Dylan Roof, he hasn't been tried yet, so I have to say alleged. But he is alleged to have killed 9 in the Charleston church shooting last year. He's been charged. But he's alive and in custody, and he's white. So were I black, I just might have the perception that things aren't fair. It's cliche, but perception is everything. So in light of the 2 shootings, it shouldn't be surprising that demonstrations were held in a number of cities on Thursday. And now it really gets ugly. There were very peaceful demonstrations being held in a number of cities, including Dallas. Protests were peaceful, the police were peaceful, and then, maybe a block away or so, snipers started shooting at the police. 5 police officers were killed, and a civilian. And as I said, all the details at this point in time haven't been analyzed, but reports are there's at least 1 arrest and at least 1 sniper is dead. Reports also indicate that it was pretty dicey because there were reports that they laid in explosive booby traps. So over the next few days and weeks, we'll see what unfolds. Correctly, I think, agencies that are outside of the police organizations involved will be doing the investigation. So we'll see. What do we do meanwhile? If asked, I'd suggest empathy. Try to imagine other people's circumstances, not just other people as individuals, but other people as groups, as tribes. If we are empathic, we won't solve all this anytime soon. But if we do not develop empathy, we doom ourselves and our children to a future increasingly poisoned by fear of each other, likely joined by loathing of each other. And a future like that is unsustainable. For different reasons, I'm nevertheless reminded of what West Virginia Senator Robert Byrd said in March of 2003. I weep for my country. I'm also reminded of John 11:35. All right, a quick note. We're getting the first reports from the data recorders from Egypt Air 804. That's the flight that went missing over the Mediterranean. Not last month. It was back at the middle of May. I did manage to find the data recorders just in the last days before the batteries might have been expected to give up keeping the pingers pinging. And they'd apparently suffered some damage, but apparently irreparable. So preliminary reports indicate the crew was trying to put out a fire, nothing more, as of now. But, these things always capture our imagination. I guess it's because pretty much we've all flown, and we know what it is to be helpless, and for that matter, prisoners in a flying tube. So let's hope they find out what caused it. Yeah, it could be terrorism, or not. It could be like when they found the crossed wires in the Boeing jet some years ago. Discovered, what led to safety changes being made, and it's safer to fly in the air today. I'd rather not, but I guess we have to touch on the election, and the whole thing is starting to smell like a dumpster fire. For different reasons, but it is reminding me of the 2000 election. Of course, that was the election where George W. Bush won the presidency in court, and Al Gore got more votes. But one similarity, and it's perhaps the obvious one, the Republicans had a dirty primary season, particularly dirty between George W. Bush and John McCain. But on the Democratic side, it was almost a coronation. Vice President Al Gore, he did have opposition. Senator Bill Bradley, who was my choice. But anyway, Mr. Gore pretty much had the whole thing in the bag. Coronation? Sound familiar? And also, once the nominees were selected, but before anyone voted, it was projected to be close. I, throughout the season, had been saying the whole time that whoever lost ought to be ashamed of himself. I mean, the economy was good. The budget was projecting a surplus, resulting in the argument, we should pay down the debt. No, we should reduce taxes. Bill Clinton, Lewinsky scandal notwithstanding, had a high approval rating. So if Al Gore couldn't take those circumstances and win in a landslide, he should be ashamed of himself, I said. But I also said that if George W. Bush couldn't take on a candidate like Al Gore, who, for the most part, his speeches were as as boring as Professor Bin's History of Magic classes were described to have been, and whose delivery was often pedantic. Geez, if George W. couldn't beat him, then he should have been ashamed. It seems to me this is shaping up the same way. If Donald Trump is the nominee for the Republicans, there's a small group still trying to prevent that. But, he has said so many outrageous things, beyond the pale, beyond belief. Many prominent Republicans have said they'll vote for Hillary or stay home. And some who were being considered for vice president are now saying, I don't want to. When former nominee Bob Dole says he'll vote for Trump, but only because he can't vote for George Washington. Well, if Hillary can't beat a Donald Trump person like that, 51-0, 50 states plus the district, then she ought to be ashamed. And yet, she's been around forever. Of course, this week, the FBI said they would not recommend prosecution for the emails, but that she and her staff had been very careless. Wow. If Trump is the nominee, now if the Dems had nominated Bernie or Elizabeth, they'd wipe the floor with Donald. But if Hillary is the nominee and the GOP nominates someone like, say, Mitt Romney or even Mike Huckabee or Rick Santorum, then they'd wipe the floor with Hillary. No one really wants to vote for her, but as prominent conservative P.J. O'Rourke says, I'm going to vote for her. I disagree with everything she says. I disagree with her, but within normal parameters. I'd consider voting for the Libertarian candidate, but third parties never win. And it can lead to who knows what. Ask Ralph Nader voters about that. Anyway, I am troubled by her emails, but I am less troubled by her emails than by her stance on GMOs. She has said that she accepts they're safe. She cites drought-resistant crops. Okay, as far as that goes. But what about glyphosate-resistant crops? That's not the same as drought-resistant. And she hasn't backed GMO labeling. All in all, it's not a pleasant aroma.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. For most of my adult life, I weighed a little over 100 pounds. Not much more than in this picture taken when I was about 17 and considering becoming a jockey. But as is often true, once I crossed into my 40s, extra weight came and it stayed. For years I tried to lose, instead gained, and ended up 153 pounds. And I'm embarrassed to show you this video. Then I learned that it isn't about calories and exercise, but instead it's about what you eat. You might say, sure, ice cream makes you fat. But there were surprises, things like orange juice not being such a wise choice if you're trying to lose weight. So I just made some basic changes to what I ate, not how much, and the weight just fell off. Now, nearly 3 years later, it is still off. And don't misunderstand, I'm eating foods I like, not bamboo shoots. Friends ask me how I did it so often, I put it in a book. It's available as an ebook for all platforms, and the print edition is available at barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. Hey, you can shrink too.
Welcome back, and don't forget you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com, and you can view all of our previous episodes either at our Facebook page or at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel. Okay, a couple of quickies. One more note on the election, and it is I saw a yard sign I could get into. Yeah, Bacardi, or maybe a little Captain Morgan. I think either one would help the aroma, or at least one's perception of the aroma. And this, I get this, and it's obviously directed toward someone who would come here and then once here to try to change things. Okay, fair enough on the surface, but what if you're here, you're productive, you're paying taxes, and you discover something or another isn't fair? Aren't you obligated to try and make things better? And in fact, I have a friend, and in a discussion once, said that, we were discussing an op-ed piece. And the friend said, well, if she thinks it's so bad, why doesn't she leave? The columnist was born here, mind you. So my reaction was, really? Shouldn't every one of us all do what we can, always to help steer us towards a more perfect union? Just saying. Also this. There was a headline I saw this week that surprised. The headline itself didn't surprise. Only upon reflection. The surprise was, Proposition 64 to be on the ballot in California this fall would legalize marijuana possession and use for adults amounts of an ounce or less. So the headline itself doesn't surprise. But upon reflection, what is surprising, even shocking, is that California is only now getting around to it? California? Really? And finally, I saw something that made me feel good for the future. Here's why. My bike looks like this. And here's what my bike may look like a few decades from now. All right, we lost a few notables this past week. On Saturday, a week ago, July 2nd, the world lost 87-year-old Elie Wiesel, noted author, professor, and Nobel laureate. He was awarded the Peace Prize in 1986. He was born in Romania in 1928, but he was Jewish, so he was sent to Auschwitz and later Buchenwald. He lost his sister and his mother at Auschwitz. Later, he wrote over 50 books. He was professor of the humanities at Boston University. Great humanitarian. He lost his mother and sister at Auschwitz, but he and his father were sent to Buchenwald. And the shame... Actually, there's no shortage of shame regarding everything about that time, that stain in our history. But the Allies liberated Buchenwald on April 11th, 1945. His dad had died just a few weeks previously. All right. So not as much gravitas as a Nobel laureate, but he was an award-winning actor, John McMartin. You may not recognize the name, but you surely recognize his face. He's been on television, he's been in the movies, but on Broadway, he was a giant. He died midweek of cancer at the age of 86. And maybe even with less gravitas, even within the show business community, she nevertheless influenced millions of baby boomers. I spoke of her over a year ago. But a week ago on Sunday, the 3rd, we lost the original Lois Lane, Noelle Neal. She was one of the 40s sweater girls. Yeah, baby. And then in the late 40s, she played the reporter, Lois Lane, in the original Saturday serials, opposite Kirk Allen. In 1951, Superman and the Mole Men was filmed. Phyllis Coates was Lois. George Reeves was Superman. And that was made into a two-parter, became part of season 1 of The Adventures of Superman. But when Miss Coates then couldn't make it for season 2, Noelle Neal got the call. Later, she made cameos. She appeared as Lois Lane's mother in the 1978 Superman. And she even appeared at the beginning of the 2006 Superman movie, Superman Returns. Noelle Neal was 95. Oh, and if you'd like to know more, you can buy a book. Larry Ward wrote a book called Truth, Justice, and the American Way, The Life and Times of Noelle Neal, the original Lois Lane. It is available in paperback through Amazon.com, but only through third-party sellers, which is probably why the lowest price is $101.80, and that's paperback. If you want to go for a collectible edition, $216.99. Finally this, and I admit, when I first saw it, I thought I'd be telling you about it, but then when I first saw it, I also thought I'd wake up the next day and find out it was a dream. Well, here we are, so obviously it's not a dream. You know, I've watched Star Trek from when I was a kid, but I am not a Trekkie. I do not know exactly how many Star Trek TV series there have been. There have been a number. I think there were 6 Star Trek movies with the original cast, and then I know there was recently a reboot, and on the reboot they're into the 2nd or 3rd of those? Something like that. Still, I do know Jean-Luc Patrick Stewart. This is an actor who is classically trained with a wonderfully rich voice. In my opinion, his portrayal of Ebenezer Scrooge was one of the best. But when I saw this, well, at the very least, I thought it would make for a very... No, you can't have very unique. Something is unique or it is not. But it certainly would make for a unique Christmas present. So, what happens? He sings cowboy songs. Not the ultra-slick produced country songs of today, which really, if you think about it, they're more like rock music back when rock music had to have a melody. But that cowboy music like Gene Autry and, the old classics. I mean classics, Cole Porter's Tumblin' Tumbleweeds and The Streets of Laredo and Buttons and Bows, even sings the theme from Rock. Take a look.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Rolling, rolling, though the streams are swollen, keep them doggies rolling, rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, let 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Don't fence me in, let me
All right, so they're using green screen. I can only imagine how long this took to make. Lots and lots and lots and lots of takes. First, you have to do it and not screw up badly, or not even screw up a little bit, which is hard. He's lip syncing, and if you're more than a split second off, it shows. And then do it again from a different camera angle, and maybe yet another camera angle, and lots of costume changes. A lot of work. Well, then there's another CD, Duets of the West, duets with people like Taylor Swift and Carrie Underwood. Patrick Stewart's real-life wife, Sonny Ozell.
I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, and I go to town just to hear a band.
Do you know all the songs that the cowboys know about the big corral where the dogies go? Where'd you learn them all?
On the radio, yippee-yi-yo, ki-yay.
Remember, I said Christmas. Yep. There's a Christmas CD. Little Drummer Boy, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Here Comes Santa Claus.
Ring and children singing, all is merry and bright. Hang your stockings and say your prayers, 'cause Santa Claus comes.
Now, I'd almost suggest the whole thing is a spoof, but it's said that it benefits a charity that helps with Syrian refugees, so decide for yourself. You can Google Patrick Stewart CD cowboy songs, or go to YouTube and search for Patrick Stewart. The whole thing runs a little over 4 minutes. I think you'll find it quite something. Anyway, Patrick Stewart singing cowboy songs or Christmas songs. How to top that? I can't. So instead, I'll simply say, I hope your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had.